modeling is taking the art from visual development and turning it into a 3D model, painting it, giving it life, and then handing it off to our character riggers who send it off to animation. So we actually create the object itself.
It's in general just become, I guess you'd say, more sophisticated, but it's more of a traditional media now. It's kind of, if you know how to sculpt traditionally, then you're going to transfer right in. Traditional skills are playing a more important role, which is great.
Do you feel that you channeling the great masters of art history to help you achieve a new level?
Raphael, you know, they speak to me.
Really. One of the big things that I was looking forward to doing is nasty stuff like this, because before this, I had been doing more technical stuff, more like realistic humans. Doing realism is fun to a certain extent. It's more fun to do something that's slightly realistic. There's more artistic license as far as where you can go with it. With realism, there is no artistic license.
Creature design is kind of the most exciting thing. Like Peter was saying, artistic freedom, and just you can do kind of whatever you want and you push things. I mean, that's what the great masters did, so it's just exciting to work on that kind of thing.
Here's my workstation. I have my Cintiq, which is what we use to paint and model. This is the monitor that we can actually draw on, paint on the screen, sculpt in ZBrush, which is very helpful and amazing. And then on the left of me, I have my standard monitor where I usually keep my reference. We're able to give metal a kind of specularity that we couldn't before. Scratches, blood, a real shine and realism that we couldn't deliver on the last project. We are working with a lot more polygons and a lot more textures on our project this time, per object.
Here's Hermes, the concept art that I got from Andy Park, who did a great job. You can see the boots are in there and what color they're supposed to be, what material. We're still working on the cloth, making sure that's all rigged nicely. And right now, I'm fighting with the hair, trying to make the hair look good. So hopefully by the time you see this in the game, it'll be looking nice and transparent. So here we are starting him out in ZBrush and adding a lot of the little detail. Say if you wanted his skin to bulge around these straps, it would be really easy to go ahead and just add musculature in here.
Today you may defeat me, but in the end, Kratos, you'll betray only yourself.
This is the centaur in our game. Andy Park did the concept. They always do like a colored version first, like this, to kind of nail the feel of the character and like what he's all about. And then they'll give us these turnarounds like this one. We have, you know, the horses have these like chest muscles that kind of flow up into the horse neck, you know, this way. And we have abdomen muscles and these obliques that kind of flow in. And where our hips sit, you know, is kind of where their shoulder blades sit. So typically most people draw centaurs. You know, this isn't, I'm not the first one to make one of these things. So, you know, this has been thought about before. But typically, you know, our hips, like where the hips would sit on a human, they put where the shoulder blades would be. It feels kind of like it would work, you know.
Kratos was created from scratch simply because we weren't sure where we wanted to go in the third game, if we were going to change him at all, or if we were going to maintain the PS2 silhouette and essentially the same exact character. We felt like it might be an opportunity to really make some changes to him, considering the level of fidelity and sophistication in what we could create now on the PS3. We started out way out there. 2.5 years later, we decided that he looks like the PS2 model. So we're back to where we started, but it's really coming together, and it's right for the game. Kratos is a very heroic, very stylized silhouette, a very thin waist, very broad shoulders. He has kind of a swimmer's build on steroids. He's 8.5 feet tall, and he has a head the size of a 4-foot-tall person. His waist is probably thinner than all of our wives. He's a trippy-looking guy, but he reads really well in the game. Basically what I'm working on now is we've got an upper body and a mesh that the art director, as well as the director, really like. So now it's a matter of creating a blend map, which is new technology for Sony Santa Monica, in that we can do expressions. Basically, I'm just creating the rage, sculpting him looking angry, and we'll be able to blend this new facial expression into the current model. So we can go from here to here. The satisfaction comes in seeing him in the game saying, wow, that's him. Only look, you can see his veins and you can see him breathing. And it looks better than the cinematics. That's kind of that's the satisfaction.
sun has returned. I bring the destruction of Olympus!
Caden's crow in the opening cinematic flies down and ends up landing on this hapless victim. And as he's eating the guy, he rips the eyeball out of the socket. So it's especially like juicy and nasty. Later today, I'll be working on the vein that the eyeball's attached to. So maybe the crow can like wrestle the eye out and really get some good squirming going on in the audience, sort of thing. The way it works is that you lay down your base color. For example, with this guy, you get like a good skin tone going. And then from there, you add additional details. Like with this guy, his main details are the cuts that he has and then the dirt that's added. There's some sort of distortion going on here, and that's because it's actually being wrapped in 3D. So you can sort of feel where the chin line is just because of how these are bending.
This is Hercules, and he's wearing these cestises, and basically they're like these huge gauntlets. Just trying to get across the fact that he's kind of like this aged warlord. He's not a super fresh young guy, so he's got some fat to him and some history. He's basically Kratos' brother, so a lot of the visual elements that he has, I think, parallel what Kratos wears. The really fun stuff was sculpting his flesh and his muscles and whatnot. Like, this is a final concept image, but we take it a step further and put a level of polish on it that isn't there. Because once it's here, this is a beautiful painting, but once it goes in the game, it needs to be perfect at every angle. Every angle you look at it has to be a great piece of work. So it's you have to go in and you take this and you take everything a step further, and there can't be any mistakes.
Call it my 13th and final labor. Soon I will become the god of war and claim the throne for myself.
When we're starting to do an environment, we'll receive a concept from our concept artist. And they do this elaborate, crazy drawing that looks really cool. And then from that, design already has their design laid out. It's basically like a sheet. You just a bunch of blocks and boxes that gameplay's already in there, it already works. From there, we go over it and we start building our level with it. We layer on geometry, the hills, mountains, whatever's gonna be in there, and incorporate all that into the sheet so it all plays together nice and make it look pretty.
Every corner in the game is pretty much unique. It's handcrafted, and that's the difference. You look at other games, it's an assembly line, it's mass-produced. They'll build a crate, and then you'll see that exact crate hundreds of times throughout the game. You don't get that in God of War.
Good people here. Everybody's really talented, super talented, but nobody has an ego or anything like that, so it's great. Well.
What's gratifying for me is coming in every day and actually liking the job that I'm doing. I bore my girlfriend with, how I'm gonna, make this sweet piece of metal, like, even sweeter. I enjoy talking about it, she hates it.
Biggest challenge is getting it done on time.
You lose sense of what starts to look into you, and you actually need other people's eyes to tell that. And I think working with a team of guys that are always open to giving you advice and telling you, hey, this looks great, or hey, maybe this could be worked on a little bit, really makes the art come out to look a lot better.
I'm going to show you an example of how we do collision. So here's the basic level that we're working on right now, and then we have the stuff we call sheet, which is the real basic collision stuff that Kratos walks and runs on. So this is actually built by a designer. This gives us the basic places where he needs to run and defines kind of the gameplay spaces. And then we build our art over that. So what we then have to do at a later point in development is go in and make sure there's a cylinder around here and there's a cylinder around here, and that we make sure that we put in little divots into this collision so that he doesn't get stuck on things or walk through things. And then here, you can see where he is walking, there is collision. But if you look carefully right now, because the sheet isn't actually finished, his feet move through little places in the ground and things like that. And because there's wall, we have collision right there, he can't go through this wall, but we don't actually have any collision on this pillar, so he's gonna go weep and walk right through. So eventually that's what we'll have to do, is make sure that all that stuff is in there and that he can't walk through these pillars, and that's what collision is.
This is a concept by Cecil Kim, and it's the exterior of the top of Mount Olympus with the Zeus statue there. and that's where you're going to be fighting Zeus. And this is another piece that I asked Cecil to do for me, and it's a top-down of the ground. That's when concept art really comes in handy, because we have to do so much ground that Kratos is transitioning over that it's really nice to get some fresh ideas. And I'll take his drawing here and then start fleshing it out and coming up with crazy marble and gold. And he had this cool feather idea. You get dirt and stuff picking in between the feathers, adding, I guess, an extra layer of filth to the world. You build it clean first, and then I'm going to go in here and destroy it and make it look like a fresh battle has happened in it.
Here's an example of a piece in Tartarus. This is a gate that basically raises up on these chains from the side. This is a pretty detailed piece from what we would normally get from a concept artist. We'll get, you know, big vista shots, and then if it's an important piece, we'll get something like this to sort of detail out what it should look like. So this is what I'll get. My first step after that is to figure out these shapes in 3D. I'll create something like this. This is just a wireframe, you know, just like any video game. You know, nothing too special about it. If we bring this into a high poly modeling program to really add a lot of the detail and like the grit and the texture, this works a lot like real clay. You can see how I can just sort of work over it and obviously not be that sloppy, but that allows me to get all this detailing and stuff in. Once we get it to that point, we end up getting all that high poly detail as a texture. And you can't really see it too well on here, but I brought it up on this screen. You can see how a lot of that high detail gets transferred on there. That's really kind of one of the big cornerstones of all this next-gen stuff.
This is one of the Hades levels. You can see right here, it consists of a large room and then a series of halls with little torch things in there. This is pre-lit, this is just the polygons. In this game, we are pushing a lot of polygons. The environments are, at least this one is probably twice the size of a God of War 2 level in terms of polygons, and probably 4 times larger in textures. If you look at the screen here, this is the level after it's been initially lit. You can see we have a nice bloom going on now, which we just got. So you can see the softness that you have along all the lights. Before, lighting used to be really harsh. The bloom just gives it kind of this real world foggy effect. Just gives the scene a nice softness to it. Gives it kind of a cinema quality. Eventually his lighting will match the environments and it'll look really nice.
What I've been working on lately is building the environment for a movie trailer. So it's been a little different than building a regular environment. I've imported the camera and I scrub through what the camera's going to see, and I just make sure my environment fills in all the gaps. This is the base layer of what will ultimately be a pretty dense forest. This is constantly what I do. I'll just scrub through the animation, see where the camera goes, make sure I have enough detail in certain areas. If I don't have enough detail, or if you see obvious seams, I'll either cover those up or I'll consider how fast the camera's actually flying through this, and will it all be blurred out anyway, and I won't worry about it. This scene is a little more detailed than a regular environment would be, just because it is a rendered movie. So that's the end of this camera, and then it continues on.
This is the concept that we get, and basically this is an overall of the entire level. It's a big cave, and you have these rock pillars. You got your cave with the waterfalls. You know, it has little details in there, but it gives you the whole picture. You get your rocks, the greenery, the waterfalls, and then the architectural bridges. This is basically the sheet that we get from the designers, and that's the basic layout that we start with. And from there we start building the actual rock and geometry on top of the sheet. You have gameplay that you can go along with as you're building your levels to see exactly where the camera views are going to be and what you need to build out. Here's an example of where I start. I have all these rocks. This is going to be a whole rock level. You have a massive level on scale compared to any of the other ones we did in God of War 1 and God of War 2. And it's all very detailed rock geometry. It takes a long time to cut all this stuff in and make it look pretty.
Here we have the original concept art that was for the grate that I designed and modeled in 3D. So here in ZBrush, obviously, I added some rope detail. Whether it was a rope or not in the concept, it looked as close. I tried to get as close as possible, so I just assumed it would be a rope. So that's what I did here, and obviously we have some of the nails going inside. This is what it came out to be. We knew we wanted a different color than what we had in the original concept, so you notice the color is a little different. We could actually bring it up to the PS3, and we can take a view of what it would look like at game. So back here is like the original model, and then here is the detailed version of that.
This is one of the pieces of concept art for the Olympus hub at the top of Mount Olympus. I'm in the process of arting it. You can see a lot of stuff is still just the gray blocking pieces, but starting to get some of the detail. Pretty much the way they have our tools set up, anything I build here, I can, within reason, quickly send it over to the development kit. I can send the entire level over, so I can run around and play and interact with the environment. I can also take chunks of the environment, send them over just so I can kind of view a specific section that I'm working on. Still a lot of the gray areas I need to go in and fill in the details. You can see this down here still all needs to be done. This is kind of our art sheet version, which kind of block in the basic shapes and spacing and everything. These things we put in our level, they're scale versions of Kratos that we use just to make sure we're keeping our scale correct when we're building the stuff, so details don't get too out of whack.